how I got to design was quite unique, as Louise said. I have a background in healthcare, and I was a medical radiation technologist, so more colloquially known as a X-ray tech. I found myself getting a little bit more frustrated with the healthcare system, and I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. So I signed up for a bunch of continuing education courses at OCAD, so the Ontario College of Art and Design. Saw a course called Design Thinking, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, I want to know how designers think. And so I signed up for it, really loved it. It was a 6-week course. And I decided that I was going to pivot into design just because of those 6 weeks. It was life-changing. So I looked up programs in design thinking, and one of them was the Institute Without Boundaries at George Brown College. And I guess the rest is history. So I'm working now for the George Brown as a design researcher, and this is one of our projects.
Fantastic. Well, Roseanne, if you don't mind to follow up.
Yeah, sure. I think we're doing the order of left to right. So my name is Roseanne. I have a background in IT. Most of my career is in SAP. I started as an SAP consultant and then became a business process analyst. And my latest role was solution architect. And then I was just, I guess, curious what else life has to. I took a vacation from life, basically, but it was just an art and design program, again in George Brown. And then from there, one of my teachers just suggested, like, why don't you try this course, try applying to it? And it was a program similar to what Eirene mentioned, which is the interdisciplinary design strategy. It was just kind of that simple, quote unquote, my decision. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I applied to it, I got in, and then this is kind of where I am now. Similar, working with Eirene and Maddy as design researchers, continuing the project that we started.
Fantastic. Well, I wish I can take some vacations from life too. Please, Maddy Lawrence, would you like to share your story?
For sure, thank you. So yeah, my name is Maddy. I have a background in psychology and social sciences of health. That's what I took in university, but I always found myself to be a very creative person. And I kind of flip-flopped between the arts and academia, and I kind of did all these things in a siloed fashion. And after I finished my degree in psych, I thought, you know, I want to help a lot of people, but I don't want to do it one person at a time. And that was kind of the road that psychology was taking me down. And so my mother actually found the program at George Brown College and suggested that to me, which is really funny. But yeah, so I found myself working with these two lovely ladies and a bunch of other really awesome students in the program that we recently completed. And now I'm a design researcher. I am also working on a social enterprise, a little bit of entrepreneurship on the side, and I'm hoping to be an urban planner one day. So that's a little bit of me in a nutshell.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. I hope you get to do something for Calgary. I think there are many areas where we can use some of your help. And talking about using some of your help, please, we have the honor to bring the ethical smart city, which is has been summarized as how design and collaboration can help to build a city. At this moment, we are going to share the presentation, and it's a very active one. So for all of you that, yeah, at some point have your phone and let's say your extra cup of coffee, I think this is going to be a good time for you because it's super interactive. So I'm going to stop sharing, and this is your turn, ladies.
Perfect. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. All right.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Luis, for the awesome introduction and warming everybody up for us. We're so looking forward to talking to everybody this evening about our approach to city building. And we like to use human-centered design and collaboration to create innovative and resilient solutions. So here is a quick little agenda for us on our end. Some things we'd like to share with you: our project summary, the evolution of the ethical smart city framework and what it's looking like today. And then we'll try it out with you, and then we'll do a little reflection and some Q&A after. Awesome. So myself and my colleagues here, we are part of a much larger group of students from the Interdisciplinary Design Strategy program here in Toronto at George Brown College. We came from all different backgrounds, and we weren't formally taught the design process, at least most of us weren't previously. And so we came in with fresh eyes in this super collaborative studio set program. So here's the design research strategy team. Of course, you've already met us a little bit this evening. Naz, who is just to the far left there, she is a project manager as well as the academic coordinator of the program. So she's not going to be speaking this evening, but she's a huge part of what we do. So we wanted to put her up there with us as well. All right. So you have learned a little bit about us, but we're curious to know a little bit about you. So if you could humor us for a moment, if you could click the link there, Roseanne has just popped it in the chat. You could also go to slido.com. There is a number code just below that. And we would love to know what is something that you love about your community. I know there's lots of people coming from Calgary. There's some from Vancouver I saw, some more Toronto peeps in the house, so that's really cool. Community gardens, yes, that's awesome. Super supportive community. Yeah, something I've noticed about my own community since March of last year is people seem to be really friendly when you're out on your daily walks. In the cold, people are always there to give you a smile and a wave. So I really appreciate that. Hospitality, humility, awesome. These are great. Wonderful. Awesome. So we're going to move on to a second question that we have for you. And that's just, what industry are you working in? Probably we're going to get a lot of UX answers on this, but some of you may have a life or two outside of UX, or your life may be UX adjacent. Let us know. Law enforcement and school, design education, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we're all just such multifaceted people, and I just love to learn about everything that everybody else does. You're so interesting. A lot of UX, yeah, as expected. That's awesome. Marketing, communications, telecommunications. Very nice. Ooh, design education. Sweet. Awesome. So we have a lot of great people with us tonight. That's awesome. Thank you, guys. All right. So moving on. This is our process. Well, at least our process looks a lot like this. The famous design squiggle that we like to use at George Brown. So with 13 students with different backgrounds in this hyper collaborative setting that we were working in, it could get a little bit chaotic at times, but we learned the process as we were solving for these huge challenges that city building comes with. So it may be a little strange to admit, but we're actually missing like all the sticky notes, the Sharpies, and just the whole studio setting these days with being online. So here's just a few shots of kind of all of us in action and the mounds of sticky notes that we went through in a short 9-month span. Awesome. So to give you an idea of our project and about how research informed our strategy, here's a really quick summary. So our project kicked off with the cohort trying to figure out how to create ethical smart cities. And in the middle of our research, we began to hypothesize that cities can save the world. In cities, innovation is enabled through problem solving by problem solvers like you and like me. So we thought solving problems through technology isn't really enough. We're at this age where every decision that we make as humans impacts the earth, our home, quite significantly. So having smart cities also isn't enough. So we had to move towards ethical smart cities. So looking at the forefront of smart city development, we identified municipalities as having the most influence and as our main audience for the project. So in that 9 months, we developed a framework, a toolkit, a playbook, a website, and launched them all last May in 2020. But for tonight's presentation, we're going to focus mainly on the framework. We're going to give you a sneak peek of the toolkit and then ultimately give you a little glimpse into how this human-centered design collaborative approach is really important to creating resilient cities. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Eirene. She's going to give us the lowdown on the evolution of our framework.
Thanks, Maddy. So the framework became the backbone of our work, and we'll talk about how the framework evolved and how our research and understanding evolved with it. So a simple explanation of how the framework came about was our cohort was trying to make sense of what makes an ethical smart city. And the more we got to know our audience through primary and secondary research, the more we were able to tailor the framework to their needs and their goals. And we'll explain our design process through the evolution of the framework. And you can see the 4 major iterations prior to what it is now. So first we set out to do a bit of secondary research and we studied about 100 smart city examples, and what resulted was the impossible figure. So we realized early on that technology was not the primary driving force in an ethical smart city development, that every aspect and decision, like a ripple effect, affects all other dimensions of a city, either economically, socially, or environmentally. And that the concept of ethics, what is ethical, is on a spectrum and in a constant state of flux. So we couldn't simply prescribe a one-size-fits-all definition to guide the future of all ethical smart city development. We tried to convey that. So like an impossible figure, a perfect or ideal smart city is an idea that may not be realized in real life. And so from the impossible figure, we tried, so we understood that all communities have different priorities and challenges, and that this version of the framework came out of a systems map exercise where we were trying to identify a flexible approach to create ethical smart city solutions, accounting for those differing priorities and perspectives. So using values, challenges, and themes, which could also be enabled by technology, we created a generative tool to test this combination. And it was used to help us ideate at a design strat, which you can see here, organized in partnership with Regent Park, which is a neighborhood in Toronto historically plagued by high crime rates, but recently undergoing a lot of development and gentrification. And so at the charrette, we quickly realized that the tool wasn't scalable enough and that there were some overlaps in elements, primarily between the challenges and themes, and a lack of emphasis in some factors of smart city solutions like technology. So we were then given the opportunity to design an exhibit for Design TO, which is a festival for designers across Toronto. And it was in the development of this exhibit that we further refined our generative tool and the ethical smart city elements. And it also gave us an opportunity to test the role of public engagement and public participation in developing solutions for the community using interactive game cards, which you see here. So thinking about the experience of the visitor, we learned to explain complex concepts in a simple manner. And we broke down the concept of the ethical smart city down to each element, equating to each word. So of ethical, smart, and city, where the values of the community combined with the technologies that make it smart, applied to the challenges of the community, make an ethical smart city, ensuring that every element plays an equal part in the solution. So upon collecting hundreds of ethical smart city ideas from the exhibit and even receiving a Design TO award for our efforts, proved that the public was interested in public engagement and co-creation opportunities. So building on the gaps and opportunity areas based on our Design TO experience, we continued on to expand on the process of how municipalities, together with their community, could co-create ethical smart city solutions. So quite organically and without the intention of doing so, we outlined 5 steps which were surprisingly similar to the double diamond design process. So we tested to see if this 5-step process worked in another design charrette, this time inviting different perspectives from across the globe, totaling about 163 students from France, Italy, the US, and of course here in Canada, to tackle different sectors like employment and education, housing, transportation, food, and health. And we successfully developed about 15 unique and tailored ethical smart city solutions for rural, suburban, and urban communities across Canada, which then confirmed that although there is no one way to prescribe what solutions are needed in an ethical smart city, we can provide a structure on how we might help guide municipalities approach its development. And with that, I'll pass the baton off to Roseanne to introduce our latest iteration of the framework.
Yay. So thanks, Eirene. So the framework as it is now, so it's a reflection of our collective understanding as well as a result of the design process that Eirene just talked about. And this process includes the limitations that we had as well as the opportunities that we were exposed to. But to quickly explain what the framework is, we'll show you, I guess, a short video.
The ESC framework is a strategic and iterative process that leverages the community's values to address its challenges while providing context to the challenges and the technology needed to address them. A strong community feedback loop built into every step of the framework allows relevant stakeholders to engage, allowing municipalities to implement ethical, sustainable, and inclusive solutions for their communities. The framework is broken down into 5 steps, and each step is accompanied with a selection of tools curated to facilitate the co-creation process. Starting at the know step, municipalities and their communities generate a shared understanding of ethics and identify and evaluate other municipalities they can learn from and use as benchmarks. Next, in the personalized step, municipalities create a shared understanding of prioritized values, relevant changes, and appropriate technologies for a community while also evaluating their limitations. In the strategized step, strategic goals for your ethical smart city plans are generated based on the values, challenges, and technology appropriate to the community. Municipalities then evaluate the potential impact by forecasting possible scenarios based around these goals. In the design step, municipalities shift from abstract ideas to tangible solutions, including ideation, testing, and iteration. Planning the implementation of potential solutions and project ideas requires that various prototypes be co-created and tested with the community to develop viable and desirable designs. Finally, in the adapt step, the lessons learned from prototyping and testing are adapted into implementation and project plans. The adapt step is the practical accumulation of everything that has been developed, from know to designed, and as such, it's the culmination of the knowledge gained through public engagement. Once the 5 steps are completed, the lessons learned from implementing the projects are fed back into the first step to establish the ethical baseline for future projects. With ethics at the forefront of development, the voices and essence of communities can be represented in their cities. To order or download our playbook and to find relevant tools for implementing our ethical smart city framework, go to ethicalsmartcity.com. By actively listening to a community's needs and collaboratively uncovering appropriate technologies, cities can help address their most difficult challenges.
Okay. So the video basically talks about the process of like co-creating ethical smart city solutions. But before we got there, we had to define what an ethical smart city is, so we can guide municipalities to transform into one. And for us, the role of ethics in a smart city is twofold, which is kind of explained through this diagram. The solutions in an ethical smart city puts the needs and values of the community at its center, but it shouldn't just stop at developing solutions. We know our society, environment, and economy. So as we generate solutions, which are the blue circles there in the diagram, we also have to evaluate them, which is the orange circle outside. And with the framework, here is the latest version of the diagram, we set out to standardize a way for communities to define and develop their own ethical smart city projects. And along with the toolkit, it is the resulting guide geared towards our audience, which are municipalities. And being true to how ESC was defined, each step generates certain outputs that are evaluated against certain criteria and also context. So a lot of these concepts are already mentioned in the video, but maybe just to reiterate, we start off by establishing an ethical baseline and benchmarking practices from other smart cities of the world through KNOW, and then tailoring each of the elements to the needs of the local community in the form of values, technologies, and challenges, and personalize. Then using these elements to plan smart city goals and strategize, design solutions in design, and generate implementation plans and adapt. So this framework ensures that municipalities are aware of the needs and values of the community and align their solutions to that. Okay, so now that we have an idea of what the framework is, why don't we try one of the tools? Okay, this is going to be a first for the three of us, so I hope it works. This is the digital version. Next slide, please. There. So this is the digital version of one of our tools, which is KNOW, which is the first step. And for the next 5 minutes, we'd love for you to join us to create an ethical smart city definition, which is an output of this step. So we'll be asking you 4 questions through Slido, and share a couple of case studies along the way. And then we will synthesize our answers, which we can plug in the ESC definition template later on. We'll be sharing the Slido link shortly, unless someone already did, in the chat where you can share your answers anonymously, kind of like what we did earlier. And then we'll be using this link for all the questions throughout. So you might just want to keep like a tab for this open for like your convenience. And oh, there, thanks, Maddy. So this is our first question. What areas in your community do you see opportunities for improvement? And then I just said community because it said Calgary, but you know, people outside Calgary can also answer. Equity, sounds good. Diversity, I see that. Transportation, yes, that's actually kind of like a very frequent area of improvement every time we ask this question. Green energy, that too. Transit accessibility, maybe we'll wait for a few more before we move on. Less oil and gas, more of anything else. Economy, well, economy is kind of big there. Pretty cool. City apps, I wonder what it means. You mean like public services in a form of an app?
Quite a bit of transit.
Yeah, a bit of transit. I guess economy is very common.
Definitely.
Okay. Also green energy, that one's also growing.
Mhm.
All right. Maybe if Maddy, you've already taken note of a bunch of it, we can move on to our next question. Thanks a lot for sharing. So our question number 2, what have you seen other communities do that you don't want to be repeated in yours? So this question we thought might need a little bit more time and maybe inspiration. So Eirene will share an example. But before we move to Irene's part, just please take note that the Slido poll is only active, see there, when we're on this slide. So when we're sharing a case study, it will actually be deactivated. But don't worry, we'll go back to this slide and we can fill it up again after Eirene shares her example.
All right, so I'm gonna just, the poll will be deactivated in a moment. All right, so for those that need a little bit of inspiration, we've picked up one from a local, well, Canadian local example. I don't know if anyone's watched There's Something in the Water, a documentary by Elliot Page. If you have, you'll be familiar with this story. And if you haven't and are interested, it's on Netflix. I should get paid for that. So in the late 1960s, plagued by high unemployment numbers, Nova Scotia decided and devised a solution in partnership with Scott Paper to build a new pulp mill in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. And the government would lease a waste treatment plant to the mill owners who would be responsible for the upkeep. So the mill would pipe its untreated waste to the plant, which would then be processed and then release treated waste or effluent into Boat Harbor. And there were some seriously positive outcomes. So creation of a lot of jobs in the forestry sector, as well as a substantial annual contribution to Nova Scotia's economy. Unfortunately, the fallout from this and what the province failed to appreciate was the other social, environmental, and even economic impacts of this partnership, especially to the residents surrounding Boat Harbor and the environment. So after almost 50 years of piping treated effluent into Boat Harbor, causing environmental damage and affecting the residents' health and way of life, and 30 years of legal battles, the government of Nova Scotia passed the Boat Harbor Act in 2015, a year after an environmental accident where untreated effluent was released into the harbor. So this bill gave Northern Pulp, the current owners of the mill, 5 years to find a more environmentally sustainable method of effluent treatment to lower their air contaminant emissions, which was 80% above the set standard, and to cease treatment operations at Boat Harbor. There was also a project, the Boat Harbor Remediation Project, that was created to complete an environmental cleanup and is a partnership between the multiple departments in the federal and provincial levels of government alongside members of the public. So it's estimated that this project would take about 5 years with a projected cost of $217 million. So I hope this gave a little bit of inspiration to a very bleak question.
Go back. Yeah, so thanks, Eirene. So we're back in this slide and the poll has been reactivated. So feel free to go back to Slido. And we'll give you maybe a few more seconds or to share your answers. Okay, so you don't like gentrification, loss of community cohesion.
And it doesn't have to be very big, large scale problems like we just shared. It could be something really small that affects your daily life.
Unclean water is actually here, environmental mismanagement. All right, so we see more of like a pattern of what other cities have, I guess, done wrong, quote unquote, and we want to avoid for ours. A lot in the environment related concerns, I see.
Might be my bias here.
Oh no, what have you done?
Introducing bias into this.
Oh my gosh, it's okay. It's okay. Okay, so thank you all for the answers. We can move on to the next question. Question 3, what things do you see in other communities that you would want in yours? So similar to the previous one, we'll let Maddy also share a little bit of example for just inspiration, and then we'll go back to the question, to the slide to reopen the poll.
Wonderful. Okay, I see a few answers sneaking their way in already. But my case study is going to be about Stratford, and that is a smaller town slash city in southwestern Ontario. It's known mostly actually for its theater productions and festivals, but it's also relied heavily on the North American auto industry that has been dying. That has actually pushed the unemployment rate, or it had pushed the unemployment rate in Stratford to 7.9%. And the city lost about 1,600 jobs. So seeing how the economy was changing, and the city started to realize that the future of Stratford for its resilience depended a lot on information and communication technologies. So they pivoted to invest to become a world leader in autonomous vehicle testing. So taking stock of their resources, Stratford's ability to actually support this type of testing became pretty clear. They are closely tied to the automotive industry still. They have infrastructure, including 80 kilometers of fiber optic cable. They're a great size. They're about 50,000 people. They have 4 seasons of weather and a lot of visitors typically coming through. So that gives a lot of variety for traffic and pedestrian condition testing. And the city ran itself in quite an entrepreneurial way. So they kind of brought in some key players in the automotive industry. So people like Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network was one, the Waterloo Center for Automotive Research. They also had connections to the University of Waterloo that was close by, and the Stratford Accelerator for Innovation. So some of those major projects that came out of all of these investments in time, one is their demonstration zone, which is 14 square kilometers. It has about 25 stoplights. They've got 3D mapping of the city that can be used in a variety of different ways. They have 14 autonomous vehicles for testing, and they've got lots of intersections with DSRC-enabled stoplights. So all that said, they have some pretty cool advantages and outcomes that came out of this. Number one, job creation, support and training. They've created a network for their stakeholders for support. They have retention of the younger generations to make Stratford their home for many years in the future. And then, of course, economic benefit of having these hard-hitting companies spending a lot of money to have pilots there, such as Toshiba, Cisco, Clemson University even, which is super awesome. So that's kind of a really interesting case study, and if we're going to talk about pivoting into a bit of a different field, which I know Calgary has been considering for a little bit. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more inspiration for this question about what you'd want to bring into your community that you're seeing other communities do, maybe like Stratford is.
Yeah, thanks, Maddy. We have, again, activated the poll. You can plug in your answers. We'll give you maybe a minute. Urban forests. To the city. Bring technology companies to the city. Block parties. That sounds fun. I see a pattern of, so we have sustainable energy, maybe new economy. You guys see too. Efficient recycling.
Yeah, infrastructure for transportation, different modes of transportation.
Mm-hmm. More art and innovation as part of like the city. Interesting. Walkable communities, yes. We'll wait for a couple more seconds before we move into the next, but if no one else wants to answer, we can go to our final and last question, which is, there you go. Based on the opportunities for improvement you've identified in question 1, what does success look like to you? I'd say for the things that you mentioned as areas of improvement, what has to be there for you to say that, yep, this is exactly what I mean when I say improve this part. So I guess it's just like the to be photo. Oh, okay. Job creation. Sustainable economy. Bike lanes, walkable destination, less driving. Interesting.
I'm personally a big fan of the 15-minute city where you
Oh,
can
yeah.
go
Walk
back
anywhere.
or yeah.
In 15 minutes. That's really cool.
Quite a bit of sustainability here.
In terms of economy and also environment.
Even socially.
Yeah. I'm just like, where? Oh, look, the bike lanes. Walkable. Yeah, I guess the social impact. There, 15-minute city, someone put it in. Did you put that in? Oh my.
Was that you,
Okay.
Maddy?
I know.
I wish.
Okay. I think we have enough answers to be able to fill this up, I hope. So this is the template that we have for the ethical smart city definition, and it's actually a Mad Lib. So an ethical smart city blanks, which is supposed to be like the synthesis of like areas of improvement that supports either the ones that you don't want or want to be in your community and ensures success. So how you see success. So I will ask Maddy and Eirene to kind of help me synthesize all your answers so we can fill this up. And I'm not sure who took notes. An ethical smart city, that, do you have anything?
So some big ones that came from our first question were sustainable economic growth, a lot about the economy, green energy, and sustainability.
Okay, so an ethical smart city has, okay, that supports.
Wait, and environmental, I think.
Yeah, we have lots as well for supports. Again, environmental management, big one. Tech in the city, innovation, like tech innovation and support was big, as well as transportation. We've got lots of really great ideas. This is what happens when we do this sort of work with lots of people. It's really interesting to see and hear everybody's unique perspective on it.
And I guess ideally we would be able to come up with like a voting system or prioritization system where you can somehow have some sort of consensus. But now, since we're just using word cloud, I mean, it's not like it's not representative of exactly how it's supposed to be done, but it's like supposed to be just a fun exercise anyway.
Yeah, smart and sustainable technology was also a big one that came through. So not just sustainable, but also smart, innovative tech. Which, of course, our UX designers, yes, we need you for that. And then lastly, it would ensure a lot of big ones that we saw was job creation, of course.
Job creation, yeah.
And then like sustainability across the board, environmental, economic, social, all of those things. So, which is awesome. It's so hard to pick one.
Yeah. I'm trying to make this English, so one moment. A little bit difficult. Hold on. What was the last part for success?
Yeah, sustainability
job
across
creation.
the board. Yeah, and job creation.
Okay.
Job creation could go into economic sustainability.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Does it make sense? So an ethical smart city that has sustainable economic growth, environmental sustainability that supports smart innovation in transportation, and ensures job creation in green tech. I guess it's just supposed to like give us a feel of like what are the things that we want, what are the characteristics that we want in an ethical smart city based on how much you understand the needs of your community. And just looping it back, like our main audience for these tools are smart city champions working in municipalities. So it would be something that ideally they would think about, that they should be asking back to the community and everyone else. They should be consulting the public and asking, yeah, what it is that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to see or want to avoid? So I guess it's just the idea behind this template. I guess if you agree, disagree, or have like violent reactions, we can talk about it later at the Q&A, but this just concludes our activity. And we just wanted to end this presentation with a reflection. We shared our process, the evolution of our work, and the latest version of the framework, and had a little bit of fun, I hope, while answering one of our tools. And I guess personally, this experience for me working on this project just made me aware of the impact of design and also the role of design in everyday things. So this experience too is unique for us as a cohort. We weren't only learning about design, we were figuring out smart cities, ethics, and at the same time learning about each other and ourselves through collaboration. But in the end, I think the solution to our challenge was also design itself. So we wanted to pose this question as a self-reflection to an audience of mostly designers. How else can we use design to have a meaningful impact in our communities? As problem solvers, do we also think about the positive and negative impact of our solutions? We just thought these are relevant questions to ask, especially at the age that we live in. And with that, we want to thank you for inviting us to share our work and for listening to our stories and for sharing your thoughts and ideas. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer what we can. Yay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. What can I say? The first time I heard or I saw the framework, my mind was blown. You know, I was absolutely amazed by how clear and how well thought out everything is all coming together. But really seeing in action, it's absolutely amazing. You know, it's just the kind of thing that I just wonder. Why it hasn't happened before. Come on, there are many things that are going on that could have been solved way before going, let's say, doing some really bad decisions. But I'm not going to leave you with that question, but I'm going to invite Caro to bring questions to you, and hopefully we can have a really amazing discussion.
There were only a few that someone had posted in the Slido. I don't know if we want to go over those or if anybody wants to put their questions in the Slack. Or not the Slack, Zoom, sorry.
Someone's raising their hand.
Okay.
Ian has his hand up that I see. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. Really enjoyed seeing the framework that you folks developed. It was super interesting and yeah, just really good positive vibe coming off of it. And what I was wondering was, in the course of your research, do you folks ever engage with sort of the economic argument for an ethical smart city? Like, I love the idea of co-authorship. I love the way that communities could be driving their own sort of definition of their space. And I was just curious to know if you really engaged with those ideas of how to get the economics of it all rolling to get those big partners on board. It may not have been in the scope of the project, and I'm just curious if you had.
One of the questions actually in one of our tools is that who should you be partnering with? I guess it's just a question that we had to make sure that they answer before they go in and plan something, but also at the same time has to be aligned to what the community actually needs. So I'm not sure if that really answers your question in terms of, because we haven't really tested the tool end to end with like a real thing. I feel like you need tools to be able to support you in looking for the right kind of partner. But it also depends on what you want to achieve, and I guess how your values would align to that. I guess that's just my thought, and I'm not sure if Eirene or Maddy would want to.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of echo what Roseanne mentioned. We did think about considerations that needed to go into, the economics, the financial feasibility of it. But I think it was more of a guide through the entire process in terms of like what you need to consider rather than how to actually do it.
Yeah, I think also just based on our research, when we did like secondary research on the 100 case studies, a lot of smart cities that jumped into solutioning mode right away actually affected the economics of everything because they already implemented solutions that wasn't relevant. So I guess like looking more of like the process end to end as like, how do you first figure out the right problem to solve? Let's say for you to be able to implement the right kind of solution, then I guess figure out the economics of it later on. That's kind of how we got there.
No, that's great. Thank you.
So Murray has his hand up. There were also questions from the Slido. So maybe we can do a question from the Slido and then go to Murray and then a question from the Slido, if that's okay.
Cool. You might do two birds with one stone because some of mine were in the Slido.
Cool. Oh yeah, they were.
I just posted it in the chat actually.
Sorry, I wasn't quite sure which medium we're using there. I guess I get to ask when I'm on deck. I'll just ask both of those. So I just wondering about. I'll just repeat my questions I wrote. Is the framework intended for government to apply and then loop in the other stakeholders, or did you see this as being applied by community members or nonprofits or even private industry to then apply in the community and then see where it goes from there?
Yeah, so I'll answer that one. Definitely the main audience for our for this tool and framework is the municipalities. But what we tried to ensure was that at every step of the way, like there were questions posed that they needed to pose to the public to be able to answer it, whatever the tool asked for. Hope that answers your question.
Thanks. If I can, I'll just put in my other one.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
So the other one was just, were you able to look at involvement of civic user testing groups? So in Toronto, there's GRIT. We're trying to set something up similarly in Calgary and so on. But it's funny how you saw that it's doing your research fitting into those cities that you looked at.
Civic tech users, you mean?
It's like civic user testing group. So essentially it's like a group of.
Oh, where you can test ideas.
Yeah, so it's a pool of folks from across different communities, generally brought in by folks working on civic-like applications, typically.
So no, we didn't.
Yeah, we didn't, but that's actually good information.
But our latest iteration, which we're currently working on, that we haven't actually shown here, actually was brought. We kind of did a little bit of that on our own privately, not using these groups, but through conferences regarding smart cities. So we have been doing a little bit more testing with certain groups and municipalities.
Yeah, and I think the tricky thing what we had in the framework is because let's say our main audience are municipalities, because also I guess based from research, there's usually a champion in any smart city development, and that usually belongs I guess in the municipality, not necessarily a mayor or something, just, there would be someone in the community would be like, yeah, I want this to be a smart city. I want our city to be a smart city. Kind of, it's just someone championing like the whole thing. And it's like, even if, let's say, through our research, we do encourage public engagement, because that's how you kind of have to get to know the community and the solutions that you have to implement. Like, this process is also, I guess, different. Like, it's like a different level, I guess, different plane from a public engagement kind of work and also activity. And I guess that's where the civic user groups would come in. Let's say once we get the municipalities to think of like, okay, I have to be ethical when thinking of smart city solutions, then they have to somehow again plan their kind of like public engagement methodology, or like, I don't know, roadmap. How do you invite people? Like, who do you know who to invite? Like, I guess those are the things that they have to start thinking of, and then plan who to talk to, how to test these things.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I think Samira. Samira.
All right, we have more questions.
I think there was one person who asked on Slido. So essentially, is ethical smart city an almost urban scale UX design process to pinpoint large scale community problems and then solve for it?
Exactly.
Yes.
Our solution was designed.
Yeah.
I guess talking about scale as well. Yes, it's for urban, it's for suburban, but it can also be used in the more rural settings. So that case study, Stratford, that I brought up earlier, has only 50,000 people living there. And it's kind of interesting, our expert in residence at the program, he is an urban planner himself. He jet sets like around the world to conferences and meets people doing amazing things around the world in the smart city realm. And he thinks that like the rural settings are actually like gonna push smart cities and ethical smart cities forward. They have like just the perfect size to kind of test and pilot and then eventually scale their solutions up into larger settings, which is super interesting. So, I mean, yes, it's more tailored to like a larger setting, but it can really be used in any size community. Yeah.
Cool. And is it Priyanka? She has her
Yeah,
hand up.
hello. So just after hearing that you had an expert in residence who talks to a lot of people working on smart city related things, I was wondering, to what extent did you guys look into the like high tech aspects of smart cities, like all of the the cameras and the AI and all of that, all the data collection, because actually that was something that did not come up in a super significant way in our exercises, certainly not how I saw it. And I mean, I was just wondering, what was your experience of hearing about those kinds of things, if you did, and if your team, your cohort, had an experience of rejecting some of that when you were thinking about smart cities, or if it was a bigger part of your cohort experience than it was here.
Maybe I'll start and then we actually see technology as more of an enabler. So a lot of our research, I guess, also even in my example earlier, the ones who jump in like solutioning mode, like even like there are some companies who offer like the smart city even as a service. They have like, yeah, put this in and then you're now a smart city. put cameras in your street, like, and then you're now a smart city, kind of. So I guess we saw that a lot in our research of just how when you say smart, you automatically means like the latest technology. But even through our interaction with our expert and resident, the technology doesn't have to be like anything fancy. It could be as simple as broadband. And that's really just how our world is. There are a lot of communities that when you put broadband will already accelerate a lot of their economy. Like it means jobs, it means new business. So it's actually kind of interesting when you think of technology, you automatically think of like, I don't know, AI or like augmented reality, which also obviously they're also technology, but it could also be like the very simple, like obvious answers, which is broadband. Yeah.
And we definitely did do some research into, into the bright and shiny stuff. But what it all came back to was really making sure that the ethics portion was included, in terms of especially like privacy laws, right? In terms of, we talked a lot about how, installing cameras in public spaces, like what does it mean for those that can't say no to living in areas that have that are, public housing. So like if you were to install cameras there, how can they say they don't want to live in that area when that's all they can afford? And so it really came back to the ethics of technology and how it's being used.
And Murray has his hand up also.
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Corey has his hand up too. Sorry.
Hey, great job, guys. That was really awesome. I really liked your visuals, by the way, the Venn diagram to kind of explain the importance of all three components of what makes an ethical smart city. I was waiting for that kicker to say, like, what do you mean by ethical smart city? Because the concept of ethical could mean so many different things depending on who's saying the word and what group you're talking with. So this might be the most like obvious question and potentially silly one, but I feel like the implications of what you guys have talked about with this framework, the toolkit, all the different components you've talked about, there's a lot of opportunity with this. So kind of you talked a little bit about you're creating another iteration of this framework. Can you talk a little bit more about like, what do you mean by like, what do you see in terms of next steps? What do you see in terms of, maybe the next couple of steps or beyond just the next iteration? I'd be curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay.
Or Roseanne?
No. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so kind of going back to our mission and vision, if we take it further, we do hope to maybe test it out to actual communities, municipalities, and then continue with iterating that. But, having that real world sort of example and testing would be great. I think our resident expert, he has also been continuing with our project here, has been pushing for that. He has a couple of cities that are already on board. So that might be another next step that we can do.
Amazing. Congratulations, guys. I think it's amazing to hear.
Thanks, Corey.
And next we have Jason.
Hi there. I'm certainly realizing that this isn't, rolled out into a lot of tangible real world examples as of yet. I'm just wondering if you put any thought into sort of reconciling the economic, we'll call it realities of sort of, non-user centric design applied to, suburbs and car dependent communities when, the land developers are building them because they're profitable and what people want to buy, but they aren't necessarily in the long-term best interest of the cities, as well as these solutions coming out of this framework.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard hard thing to think of. We actually were in conversation with the city of Markham in Ontario, and they were talking about, so it's a suburban area, and they were talking about how transportation is a major gripe, and public transportation, unfortunately, is not in their hands. It's a larger, like higher level governmental issue. So I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of like, it's not just economic, but it could also be even like something that is out of their control in terms of the municipality level. Yes, I think I can't exactly answer your question as of yet, just because you're right, we haven't really tested it. And so hopefully with the next iterations, we would be able to.
Mhm.
I admit it's a loaded question coming from what I know of land developers in Calgary and the weight they carry.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely. I think that comes back to the idea of like the partnerships and kind of finding those partnerships with the city and with developers and that sort of thing, that kind of mesh and they match. And a lot of power comes with having a lot of money and being these developers. So it's kind of it's very difficult. We're finding and we're seeing a lot of cities backtracking. We personally in Toronto had our waterfront development, Sidewalk Labs, like Google coming into the city, blah, blah, blah. Like that was like a huge topic of conversation during this project's development, and seeing this huge company pop in. And I think it's some people's opinion that the public and the city kind of came in at the right moment and stopped that partnership before it went too far for some. So yeah, it's city design is complicated, and and finding those partnerships that work long term for sustainability and resilience is super important. Yeah.
Ross, did you have?
You mentioned Sidewalk Labs, and I'm actually curious as to what the discussion was like when that was going on there, because I've been following smart city stuff for a couple of years now, and I know there was a lot of kind of unethical practices and documents that came out with related to Sidewalk Labs that ended up causing things to happen. And your project seems like it's mainly focused on the engagement with the community aspect, but have you looked or discussed or integrated anything with regards to the ethical technology design of smart cities into your research or other projects?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another big and good question. Thank you. So we did do a lot of research, especially when it comes to like data privacy, data sharing, open data sources, those sorts of things. And we did at the beginning and the start of our program, did a lot of research on procurement. And finding those partnerships and finding the right way. And eventually we couldn't really land on one specific kind of roadmap for people. And I guess that's why we don't really give any specific directions in the framework. And it's mostly up to the specifics of the community and what they're looking to achieve. So if they do want some really cool, interesting, up and coming tech, they really have to put in their own effort and their own research behind that, I think. And that's something that we definitely stress in the framework and in our toolkit and in the book as well.
Yeah, I think also because it's like how people see ethics or what is ethical is kind of different for everyone. So it's kind of just hard to prescribe, but I guess like going through seeing the end-to-end process of like what do you have to think about in order to get there. We've met a couple, I guess, when we went to a few, to smart city conferences, and we did meet folks who work on AI and like ethical AI or like technology and also ethics in it. And every time I ask them a question of like, yeah, but how do you define, like, what do you mean when you say you're being ethical, when you define certain logic? Like, who gets to decide how a computer will think? Like, who gets to say that the logic behind that code is ethical? And it's their answer is always, well, we have to test it. We set this certain kind of thing and then we test it and we kind of it grows. I don't think it's perfect right away, but I guess it's just based on like my interaction with everyone else. And I've always thought it was kind of just very interesting how no one really knows exactly how to do certain things. But I guess people are trying, people are getting their work out there. And I think that's the important part.
Okay, and we have one final question and we'll wrap it up for the evening. And I think it actually works really well with this with your last comment, Roseanne. It was from Murray, and he wants to know, were there other differences between current smart city efforts and what you were seeing with the framework that municipalities were missing or are missing?
Let me see. Say it again, sorry.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so the question is, so it says, I would guess the addition of the ethical component is the largest difference. But were there other differences between current smart city efforts and what you see with your framework that municipalities are missing?
I guess it's mostly because when we say ethics, it's kind of like already the values and understanding the needs of the community, I guess public engagement at the forefront of everything else. Other than that, I think what was missing, which also we tried to do with everything that we did for a year, was they didn't know where to start. It's like if a community wants to be a smart city, they didn't know where to start. And I guess the framework or even the toolkit is meant to help them, like no matter where they are, even if they've already implemented a few projects, they can always go back and see like, oh, but by the way, how if did we implement the right things? So I guess the difference would be like they didn't have exactly like a standard set of tools that they can use. It's a lot of trial and error. I guess that's a similar thing even then and now. But I guess just that tools.
Yeah, I was going to say the feedback loop.
Yeah.
So just making sure that, like Roseanne mentioned, after implementing solutions, that they would go back to the beginning and kind of see whether or not to test whether or not it actually solved this, the problem that they were solving for.
Like a roadmap, let's just say, like if they implement the solution, is that enough? Like they kind of have to just build their own thing. And I think these concepts are also kind of new in the public sector, if I'm not mistaken. This is kind of like new things. It might be normal for like if you join a tech company, then of course you'd have a product roadmap. But I guess like these new things, of course you'd consult your users, but I guess, yeah, it's different.
Well, fantastic. What can I say? I think you have given us two amazing presents tonight. One is this fantastic presentation, and also from the answers that you have gathered from the community, I cannot be more proud of the people I'm with. I think all the intentions and topics and ideas that came from this practice are absolutely amazing, and I feel very very comfortable being with all of you guys. So I love you. It's been really, really fantastic seeing all this amazing group of ideas coming together. So for me, I just have, let's say, one way to show my gratitude, and also say, well, how can we keep in touch with the next step, the next evolution of ethical smart cities, and the invitation of well, once once you have an idea on that, well, how can you bring back this amazing framework to Calgary?
Or is that an answer we have to answer? Okay. We can let you know. It's like we can let you know, Louise. We'll be updating the playbook and also like the toolkit. I guess ideally the website. But we'll let you know once it's updated for sure.
Absolutely. Well, what can I say? This is your home now. I hope. I hope you feel also welcome to Calgary, more in spirit right now, but later on physically, you're welcome to visit us, and hopefully not in February. But in the meantime, what can I say? I have to say thank you so much. I know that you are 2 hours ahead of us, so it's a bit late for you. And it really means quite a lot, you know. It's a really, really, really special meeting. And well, we have a couple of things and announcements we have to do. Please stay with us. We have the next event that is coming up for us is another collaboration, and in this case is with our friends in Edmonton, with the meetup in Edmonton. That is, we are going to collaborate, and we're going to build together the event for the World Information Architecture Day, and it's happening February 27th. You can see that it's already the event is in Meetup. This collaboration is going to be a bit of a larger event. It's around 4 hours, more than 4 hours, I think. And we are going to have quite a lot of amazing news and surprises as the data comes. Please keep in touch. Also, we have another amazing collaboration, and this is with our friends of Chick Geek. And this is happening in March 8th. Well, so far, all the theme is around being brave, having candid conversations in the work environment. And now that work is pretty much the same place as home, I guess that's also going to have an extension for other realms of life. And well, we have also a new section. We have very good news. We have a section for jobs and talent, and this is the opportunity for people to share opportunities. And for this, I would like to bring Jason Dorn to mention around really cool roles that are happening.
Yep. Hey everyone, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Jason Dorn. I'm a senior UX researcher at ShareWorks by Morgan Stanley. We were previously Solium Capital, got acquired about 2 years ago this month by Morgan Stanley, and it's been pretty adventurous journey, and the UX team is at capacity right now. We've got 9 practitioners here in Calgary, 3 more in the States, and we're looking to probably add another 2 more this quarter. So we're looking for probably intermediate to senior UX designers right now, but we're a very collaborative team. So if you are interested in research too, you'll definitely get your chance to get hands-on experience with usability testing and talk to participants as I do every day. So definitely, the roles are in Calgary right now. If you have questions, you can reach me on the Slack group, or else our principal UX designer, Stuart Jones, his email address is right there, or it's also up on our website at shareworks.com.
Well, what can I say? Thank you so much. And from everybody that I know from the team, they're a really amazing group of people. So if you are really looking for the next opportunity, I think it's a really good chance to get into a dream team. And also, I will be sharing that information either on Slack or in the follow-up notes in the meetup, so you don't have to stress up and trying to copy this really long URL. Talking about long URLs, we have also other ways to stay in touch with us, and the first one obviously is our website, I guess calgaryux.com. And also, one of the things that I would like to say is that we are in Meetup, but we are not a Meetup, we're a community. So another way to really interact with the community is through Slack. If you want an invitation, or just, let's say, you want to have a easier access to that, let me know. I can just send you the URL too. And please, if you have some chance, keep an eye on what's going on Calgary UX and Meetup. We have already plans for the next easily 4 or 5 events. It's just we are doing a bit of a slow drip, so you can capture some of the curiosity. And talking about curiosity, February is going to be all about curiosity. That's the next topic of our event, how curiosity can be used for bringing important questions. And also, once again, thinking about important questions. We have a follow-up, and this is a question that is coming on from our amazing speakers. How else can we use design to have a meaningful impact in our communities? So now the question is open for everybody. If you want to stay a bit longer with us and have this conversation, is fantastic. If our amazing speakers, they feel that it's a really good time to go to bed and call the night, we can only say thank you very much. We hope you have an amazing, you had an amazing time with us too. And as I said, we're happy. We're really happy to welcome you back. And please stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Luis. Yeah, a few of our cohort, are also here, not only the three of us. I just want to give a shout out to them for being here. Thanks, guys. And thank you for having us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having us. I might have to bow out. It's the lunar New Year's Eve, so I'm going to be celebrating.
The ox is going to be the one, I really have quite a lot of trust in the ox.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
For the guys that are staying with us, also, the question is there, how would you like to have a way to have meaningful impact in the communities?
I like to ask questions, not answer them.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, this is the part where in many ways we don't have to come up with an answer. It's just the reflection that on one side the scale of the community could be bigger or smaller than us, in the sense of let's say my neighbors, I don't really have too much of an opportunity to know them. But at the same time, it would be amazing to be able to do something impactful together. And also it applies in multiple ways, right? Like Calgary UX is a community, and we're trying to collaborate with other communities to create this larger impact. So in many ways, this can be answered in different realms, not only, let's say, city or governmental wise.